Okay, you crazy cats. Have I got an episode for you today? Mal, indeed. What we are going to be looking at today is this. It's a 720p, 16 frames per second pure sexual chocolate. I think you'll agree. And if you don't, your mum certainly will, because she knows a good day when she sees an absolute stud muffin of a video clip such as this bad boy. Okay, calm down, Berry. You're getting a little overexcited here. Time to ease back on the hype and present the facts. Let go. So here it is. The workflow I have been promising for a while. It has received an update the last couple of days in the form of model types, and that is what launched me into my rather immature teenage level opener. So what are the facts as we know them with this workflow? Well, better get stuck in straight away, and we will begin today's adventure with the model section. What we are looking at is the low noise model loading section of a workflow that uses first frame, last frame images, and then uses a ControlNet driver to make the video. I will get to those sections shortly. But we do use Face, and that is one of the things that makes this workflow different, at least for me. I have incorporated not only the FP8 E5M2 2.2 model here, but also the new Vase Fun 2.2 FP8 E5M2 module into that. My god, that is a mouthful. Not only that, but I have added in the high noise model too. Not something I have bothered doing before, because, well, it just ran too long for my liking, and I was getting good results without it. That might have been a mistake. But before we talk about the double model workflow, let's talk about a problem I still have not resolved and how it led me to the discovery made with this workflow. Now, I'm sure a lot of you low RAM guys like me look upon the 5096 grand GPU horsepower Ferrari owners with a mix of envy, but also acceptance. Now, I like to brush shoulders with the top brass, and I do my best to barge into any and all places where I find the comfy witty devs sitting around talking about, well, I'll be honest, I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about most of the time.
Yeah, well,
they are eggheads.
It's way above my pay grade to understand their code banter.
But I watch and learn, and with more suction than your mum after a few bottles of wine. Hang on, I meant hoovering ability. God, your mind is in the gutter. But I hang about like a lurking thing and pick up on stuff. Anyway, the point of this rather long-winded meander was, what was my point? Yes, I see them all talking about this WAN 22 dual model thing and see their results and the time it takes them with their Ferraris and think, Mark, old boy, don't try to compete with that. No good will come of it. So I didn't. That might have been a mistake, but the greatest discoveries have often come from mistakes. Ask your mum. I'll stop with the immature mum jokes now, sorry about that. And in this instance, a happy accident led to a discovery. And it is admittedly hard to resist mentioning your mum again, but I won't. Now, I could go into detail about the problem I ran into, but suffice to say that something weird is going on when you mix Vase 2.1 models with WAN 2.2 models, and I'm not exactly sure what is causing the problem. But something changed about a week ago, and I have to assume it was in the Comfy UI system itself, but so far have not found the culprit. It could of course be user error, and in my case often is. Ask your mum. Damn it, I said I wouldn't do that anymore. Okay, back on track. The long and short of it was, the My Fantastic Vase 2.1 workflow that was doing okay with the low noise WAN 2.2 model stopped working. I spent 4 hours trying to fix that bastard, and I will use that kind of language in this instance because it was a bust. So in my desperation, and after kicking the cat, just because, and still feeling no better, I had to look elsewhere for a solution. As luck would have it, and it's curious how this happens, but as luck would have it, the Vase 2.2 Fun model had just been dropped into the community. I wasn't having much fun at that moment, I'll be honest, so there was some irony in it being called that. But with no other choice other than to go backward, I did the only thing a man could do in the situation. I mounted your mum for some fun. Good lord, what is wrong with you? I didn't do that at all. But I did mount the Vase Fun model into my trusty old Phantom Vase FFLF workflow and started mucking about with it. Then I made another discovery, and it might be the root of the problem I previously mentioned. And to keep from this video turning into one of my epic saga, let me summarize it thusly. Don't mix the model and module types with WAN 2.2. Stick to FP8, E5M2, or whatever model you have. The problem I had before the aforementioned problem was with Phantom GGF and BF16 Vase. The problem I had after that was mixed model and mixed Vase types, and even in this workflow I had similar issues until I bit the bullet, downloaded the FP8 E5M2 models for each and every item, and Bob's your uncle, and that had nothing to do with me or your mum.
It wasn't me.
So long story short, with WAN 2.2 and possibly with Vase, try not to mix the model types. More on this issue as I discover more, but I tell you, quite a few people are getting confused by this issue and it is yet to really be solved. But for the purposes of this workflow, we solved it here. Before I continue,
these models are downloaded from Keyji's scaled models, and this is another curious thing that surprised me.
the fact this workflow runs at all. Why? Because when I first ran it, I used the VACE 2.2 unscaled version that was 6 gigabytes in size, and that module was plugged into the WAN 2.2 model that is a whopping 15 gigabytes in size.
Yeah, right, and it ran both models, and it didn't go, what the duck? Quite food for thought. This model setup runs better than a GGUF model combo that has a lot smaller.
Yeah.
I don't get it either. All I know is that the E5 M2 scaled versions, and you need the scaled versions, by the way, but they're really for us 30XX card guys. So if you are on something lower, you may have problems, I don't know, but clues are here for you to find the right balance. I'll run it later and show you the memory it uses on my rig as a guideline. Let's get on and look at the rest of this workflow. And the best place to start is at the beginning. Though if you watched my last video, I talked about the Radial Sage attention speeding thing zip, and you might have noticed I don't have it here. That is because this is so hot off the press, I haven't had time to test it much beyond the first successful run at 720p. So there is much to be tweaked. And this is you not mentioning your mum, despite having lined the moment up perfectly. Moving on. So here we are at the start of the FFLF workflow, with my first frame and my last frame going into VACE encode nodes. There's much to say about this area. I don't really need to touch it, but it does have my memory trick of using GGUF model for the clip. This is of course a wrapper workflow, not a native workflow, which means it's got KeyGI in the back end coding it in. I should mention I haven't updated my CompuUI installation of my KeyGI nodes since, quite a few days now, mostly because 5 days ago I spotted someone having issues with copy and pasting nodes, and I haven't seen them say it is fixed yet. You'll update when I get the chance, and yes, it is a good idea to keep everything up to date during research periods. The opposite is the case once I start a project. In fact, I rarely update mid-project because you never know when something is going to go. So the first trick in this workflow is a bit of a fancy one, I'll admit. And it comes in the form of control nets. Here is the control nets section, and I tend to use it only once to get the blended control net video saved out. Then I bypass this section and use a video loader to run the control net driving video. Why do I do that? Memory, of course, and speed. It means it won't be converting the animation every time I run the workflow. Now let's talk about how I get that animation in the first place, and why I do. So you can see the last frame of a previous animation I made using Phantom that is about to be converted to a depth map and an open pose, and then I blend those two control nets together at 0.25 strength using Screen method, and the result I save out and then load it back in on the next run to drive the FFLF workflow. How did I get the first ever animation? Well, I start with crap like this and use prompts and muck about until I have a rough action, motion, movement, pose structure I'm happy with. You are looking at previous examples. It is all a bodge, and I do what I have to until I end up with a control net that looks like this when blended. Note, I am not retaining face structure, just body structure with basic pose, arm action of the man on the left lifting a gun, and the background structure. Why do I do this instead of just letting FFLF run? Because I need to try to maintain environmental consistency, and if I don't do this, it won't. So let's assume we did all the jim-jammy nonsense required to get ourselves a half-decent control net blend. What happens next? Well, as I said, I save out the blended control net consisting of depth map and basic pose to a video, and then bypass the control net creation section and load up the video. That then feeds into the VACE start to end frame node as a control video. I think you are getting the picture. And I ran it here so I could show you the previews to get a bit of an understanding of how VACE works in this context. VACE, as I have said many times before, is a Swiss Army knife of CompuUI. It can do a lot of things. Looking now at the previews, you can see what both the mask and the image output from that VACE start to end frame node are but to. It's interesting, isn't it? And from the VACE encode node, we move on to the sampler section, and this gets a little more involved because we have the double model situation of WAN 2.2 in play. I won't go into this part because plenty of others do. It's basically splitting the work across the high noise model in the first sampler and the low noise model in the second sampler, and using 6 steps to do it. What is left to talk about? Not a lot. So let me now just fire off this workflow and, as I promised early on, show you what it looks like when running on the 3060 RTX GPU 12GB VRAM machine with only 32GB of system RAM on a PC such as mine. Let's go. So at this stage it has kicked off, and I would expect to see that blapping noise in the GPU as it chugs to load the models and whatnot. In my video on memory, I talk about killing Comfy UI off when it's doing that, but not during the model loading processes. Then you expect to see some crazy swings. So the models are all loaded for the high noise run, and we are in to the first sampler where you bite your nails and clench your buttock cheeks and wait to see it top over. But no, even the system memory and swap file seem to be holding strong, and this is now getting exciting. It's the place I often ask myself, how long do I wait to see that white bar appear on the black screen there to tell me just how many decades it plans to take? And now I know, and it is a civilized 20 minutes-ish. That was as fast as my first go, but just starting from a fresh start, so I am expecting it to take a long time than the 30 minutes I achieved initially. We shall see. We can see from the graph it has been blapping along at a fairly acceptable 15%, and I honestly was surprised when I arrived at this moment yesterday. Remember, this is a 12GB VRAM card, and between the Valley base model and WAN model, it's running 19GB of files. How can that be? It's magic, I tell thee. What do you think, Biggles? I agree. And now we are into the second sampler load, and this is the low noise models. And a tie where I sweat a bit, but it seems to be holding just fine. This is the memory graph again and the swap file info, and where I pretend to know what it all means. And we've done a ridiculous 47 minutes, which is rather embarrassing since I promised 30. But as I said, this was the first run after a restart of Comfy UI, and well, I haven't started trying to tweak it all yet. So the end result looks like this, which is 720p and 16 frames per second. From there, I take this into a Rife workflow and interpolate and upscale quickly to 1080p and 24 frames per second, which looks like this. From there, I go swiftly to a USDU detailer/Optria workflow and run it through there on a 0.08 low denoise setting in order to polish it a little bit. So it looks like this. And it's almost finished, but for the fact I need to now reverse it using Shotcut or something similar. And there we go. Like I said, sexual chocolate, I think you'll agree, and we are done. Bob is your uncle, but I definitely had nothing to do with that.
It wasn't me.
That will do for today's workflow. Download them from the website. Next video will be... what will it be? I'm not sure yet. I have to look at working in latent space. Maybe I will do that. So till next time, Bambinos, don't you go changing just to please me. And that is goodbye from B and goodbye from Biggles. Say hello to your mum. Oh, God damn it. I just couldn't leave it alone, could I?
It wasn't me.